Hello, and welcome to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I'm Leah Drew, your host and mind-body healing guide. This podcast is for the awareness seeker ready to go deeper, create change, and feel more empowered over their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. My intention is to be a catalyst for you as we explore topics surrounding holistic health, mindset optimization, trauma healing, emotional intelligence, and much more. I'm so grateful to have you here and to support you as we evolve in mind, body, and spirit. Let's breathe in and out. Now, let's dive in. All right. Welcome back to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I am Leah, your host, and I'm so excited to have with me today a dear friend and an incredible catalyst in the world of healing and love and all things consciousness and spirituality, Harrison Meagher. And Harrison is someone that I met through quarantine, through the days of quarantine. And particularly, we met through a social media app called Clubhouse that was really popular at the time. And Harrison is a spiritual love coach, and he's also the host of the Cosmic Love Antenna, which is a podcast that brings you on a mystical voyage from the intellect to the soul, delving deep into the mysteries of love's spiritual essence and unfolding. Harrison, thanks for being here with me today.
What an honor, Leah. I'm excited for many reasons, and I'm sure we'll get into them today. But I'm grateful that I'm here as a part of this beautiful podcast expansion journey that you're a part of. So thank you for having me.
It's so my pleasure, as I've been on your podcast, and it's amazing to now have you hosted here on mine. And you know, the aspect of the mystical voyage that you have in your podcast name, I just feel like that's so deeply described our journey since we've met each other.
It really has. You know, you gave the reference of Clubhouse when we first met, and for anyone that's tuning in that either went on Clubhouse or has some peripheral understanding of it, looking back on it now, it's such a interesting social experiment, and we spent time together. You were creating spaces, and we were educating and teaching, and it really, going through everything we went through in quarantine, and all the fear and the pain and the disconnection that people were going through. The spaces that you created and that we were a part of really brought not just mystical understandings to people, but a lot of soothing, a lot of healing, a lot of transformation. So it's really I think it's a symptom of your bright light in this world. So excited to talk about more of it today.
I appreciate that. And yeah, that was the time when everybody was just deeply craving connection again, and nobody really had it. Everybody was just like stuck in the corners of their home.
Yeah.
And not only was it incredible bringing all of my lovely friends together in one space where they could share their voice, but it was also such a cool opportunity to learn from so many people around the world. Like, for those of you that aren't familiar with Harrison, Harrison lives in Australia. He is nowhere close, and Harrison and I have never actually met and hugged each other in person, and I deeply look forward to that one day. But it's amazing.
It's going to be a powerful experience. But I think Clubhouse, I mean, not to go too down this rabbit hole, but we're starting here, so let's just talk about it. I think what Clubhouse showed us in many ways was that distance, as you just described, isn't a factor. That distance, and especially when we start getting into spiritual conversations, like time and space, it's such a cliche thing to say, but it's so true. And Clubhouse showed us this as an example. Time and space is irrelevant when you are connecting at a deeper level, right? I've never met you in physical person, Leah, but each time I say that, it's not it's not confusing to me because I know you and I don't need the physical connection for that to be a fact.
Mhm. And what a beautiful aspect that you just described that social media does carry. I think that there's a lot of light and dark factors to social media, as we've talked many times before about, but it does connect people. And when
Mm,
used in conscious ways and when used in really supportive and loving ways, it
yeah,
can be an
yeah,
incredible tool
yeah,
for connection, for more love, for
yeah,
more experience, for more education, for more growth.
yeah,
And I'm so grateful for social media for connecting us.
yeah. And I'll just add this piece to it, Leah, because this connects to our topic today. This idea of social media being a tool. I teach a lot about using our frequency of love that we are to impact the world around us. And I think people underestimate their ability to project their love, project who they are, me as Harrison, Leah as Leah, through the things that we interact with. So in this example, social media, this example being Clubhouse or any platform that you're using. It's a objective tool. But with that objective tool, if we hold it in our heart and we set the intention of, I want to help someone, I want to speak my voice, I want to help this person heal, then that loving intention is then the image that I get. It's wrapped up in the tool that we're using, right? And it's a superpower that we all have.
It is a superpower. And I'm curious, when you're working with clients and they're not allowing that superpower to be expressed, how do you see that? Like, what do you see in their life? What do you normally see them experiencing because of that?
All right, well, let's get into it. So, because because that question really, it's the question to ask, and the
Mhm.
simple answer is a person that is stuck in their head, a person that is stuck in thinking, a person that is stuck in believing false stories and false narratives. And I say this not as someone who is holier than thou. I say this as someone who is constantly observing himself in these states and using the things that I teach to get myself out of it. Right in my book, I have a chapter called "The Longest Journey We Ever Take," and that longest journey is from the head to the heart. So, to answer your question more specifically, what it looks like for people that aren't expressing that love frequency, aren't in that heart space, well, it looks like anxiety. It looks like disconnection. It looks like someone that's forgetting how powerful and abundant they are. It looks like someone that isn't attracting in a spiritual partnership that they deserve. It looks like someone that is stuck in, I know this is your wheelhouse, stuck in chronic dis-ease and physical pain, right? It's a big list, but the remedy is simple.
I I am so deeply on board with that, and I think that so much of the world, and I did actually have this conversation with a client of mine last night. I think so much of the world is feeling very stuck right now,
Mm,
and that word stuck can be used in so to describe so many things that you just expressed.
mm,
But I think a big reason for it is that we are shifting into this age of developing awareness
mm,
and reconnecting more deeply with spirituality.
mm,
And as you do that, you find yourself dropping into the heart space.
mm,
You find yourself tuning more into yourself and turning more in and listening, right?
yeah,
Not just listening to the world around you, right? In the last 20 plus years of the development of technology and it being rapidly rammed into our life,
yeah,
right? We have, in my opinion, learned to stop listening to what's happening within us. And we've had to start learning and listening to what's happening outside of us. And it's completely disconnected
yeah,
us from ourselves and from our hearts. And if we're not in our heart, how can we connect deeply with the people around us,
yeah.
with the world around us?
another a very important question, Leah. And I think a place to begin that journey is forgiveness, right? Is forgiving ourselves for being in that state. Because as you just described, we live in a soup of elements that is very conducive for creating a human that is in that heart disconnection. So I think one of the first steps we must all take is, even before awareness, I would say, is acceptance slash forgiveness. Right? I was listening to a podcast last night, and they were talking about the significance of AA, and the first step in Alcoholics Anonymous is acceptance, right? And the reason for that is we can't change what we haven't accepted, what we haven't forgiven, what we haven't at least started to release attachment or, restraint around. So I would say to all the people that are in that boat, forgive yourself. And then let's start there.
What do you see that forgiveness doing for someone? And what do you see that being a bridge for?
Asking good questions, Leah. So the what I see it doing, the first thing that comes into my heart is it's like a breath out. It's like a release. It's a remembering and a realization that yes, pain comes into our lives, suffering comes into our lives to help as act as a conduit for awakening. But it doesn't mean that pain or suffering needs to be difficult all the time. It doesn't mean we have to live a life of constantly pushing the rock up the proverbial hill, right? Change, transformation, awakening, healing can be blissful, can be a sort of surrendering and moving through, or a forgiving through a moment of ecstasy, a moment of beautiful expansion. So, a simple answer to your question is it's a recognition that this old story of having to work hard all the time to get the things that we want, that's one of the biggest illusions there is.
Right. Yeah, I think you nail it right on the head there, right? Like the acceptance and the forgiveness are, in my opinion, two very, very important stages to be with if you want to move forward, if you want to create change, if you want to create shift, if you want to get unstuck. Because, like you're saying, right, having the understanding of and the acceptance of what is or what has been, and then that forgiveness piece being what is that release.
Yeah.
And by releasing, I think it gives you that ability to simultaneously be with the bliss
Yeah.
in in one space and the challenge in another.
Yeah.
And just because you're experiencing something and it's blissful doesn't mean that it's not challenging, and it can be both.
And I think we'll get to this a bit later, but I'll just sprinkle this in here. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to, so in that forgiveness, in that acceptance, in that surrender, because most of us have lived a life of mental mental capacity where we haven't allowed our feeling body forward. What's most likely going to happen in that moment of acceptance, forgiveness, surrender? It's going to open Pandora's box to all of that beautiful emotion that you've been suppressing for who knows how long. So it's in that moment also acknowledging that I'm emotional right now and it's meant to be that way.
Mhm. I love talking to you so much. I'm having tears coming in my eyes because Harrison, every time I talk to you, like you have this really incredible ability to take things that have like just happened in and around my life and like somehow like you don't even know what's happened, and then you talk,
Right.
you kind of like point to the thing. It's funny because I have a good friend of mine, you know him, Nathan Kohlerman. When him and I first met, he literally used to call me Pandora
Mm,
as referencing Pandora's box,
yeah.
right? Because he used to say to me, you are this catalyst to opening the box and being with all of the things.
Mm.
And I think that our society right now is a little bit afraid to open the box
Yeah.
because we've shoved and suppressed so much of it down.
Yeah.
And for you who's listening right now, and Harrison's talking about this this concept of not apologizing for your feelings, not apologizing for your emotions, right? And if you think about this in your own life, have you ever had the experience where you're talking with someone and you start crying or you start having emotions,
Yeah.
you start having tears roll down your face and immediately apologize for it and say, I'm sorry. I used to do that all the time. And I'm now in a place and where if you come into my life in any way, shape, or form, and you start shedding emotions, start shedding tears, start experiencing them, I'm going to remind you that you don't need to be sorry for your emotions, that they're always welcome here. And so I love that you touched on that because it, we don't need to be sorry for our emotions because they're a part of us. They're part of what we're experiencing.
Can I go a bit deeper here?
Yeah, yeah,
Can
always,
I take this further? So
always.
not only do you not need to be sorry for them, not only are they a part of what you are experiencing, but I would actually take it a step further and I would actually assert that to be emotional is one of the reasons you are here. Right? I would highly recommend one of the there's I like to read a lot, and it's just because I have a voracious uh, desire to learn, and I haven't read too much recently, but I have this big backlog of books that I've read, and one of the top 5 books that I would recommend to anyone that's interested in this topic is the book Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping. And in that book, Colin speaks about these 1819 spiritual laws of the universe. And I'll paraphrase one of them. And the law is you are here to be in emotion. The extent in which you deny your emotion is the extent in which you deny your emotional purpose. It is through emotion that we get to experience and feel the thing that needs to be felt. Right? As you beautifully said, I ask everyone listening to tune back into all of their most important memories in their life and look at the one thing they all have in common. They all have some kind of emotion. And that's not a coincidence. It's because emotion brings us closer. Vulnerability brings us closer. So, just to land here, not only do we need to feel the feeling, but I would also encourage people in that moment of emotionality, vulnerability, sensitivity to celebrate yourself because you're doing what you're meant to be doing.
My brain is going to a science place as you're talking about this, right? Because you think about the word emotion, when you break it down, it's energy in motion. And you are a living, breathing, energetic being. And you function, your body heals, you grow because energy is moving. Your nervous system is constantly firing, it's constantly communicating, and energy is constantly moving in flow. And so you bring this into the actual experience of emotions. And to me, it's like if you're going to hold yourself back from experiencing the emotions and the feelings, you're actually preventing your body from being able to function in the way that it was built to.
Fact. I think in my book, that's probably one of the most repeated sentences I talk about in my book is that emotion is energy in motion. And I'll take it from another angle because I know that you are the holistic queen, my friend. This isn't just a mental, emotional, spiritual conversation. This is also a physical conversation. right? The extent in which you deny that energy in motion is also the extent in which that emotion will show up as some kind of physical discomfort or physical challenge in the future, right? Another book, because I'll just keep throwing them at people. The body keeps the score, right?
My
You
favorite.
right, right. It for people that haven't read it, it's a beautiful account of how mental, s- mental, emotional, psychological trauma connects to the physical symptoms that we have later in life due to the suppression we have of those same emotions.
Absolutely. Anything that you suppress is expressed in your physical body and will be. And the thing is, and I always remind my clients of this when they come in, especially with all these chronic issues and chronic symptoms, or they come to me with those. And it doesn't happen overnight. Like your body doesn't just develop chronic symptoms overnight. It takes to 10 years to really start to develop this experience of chronic symptom. And so, one of the questions I ask on my intake to my clients is, when do you first remember this symptom coming up? When do you first remember this happening? Because you then get to take that moment and go back another 5 to 10 years and say, okay, well, what happened? What did I experience? What was my environment like prior to this symptom developing? And unless you're in any type of acute accident, that's the only time symptoms are immediately going to be expressed. But even after that, there's going to be chronic symptoms that are expressed later on after an acute injury. And so I love that you bring this up because it's so true. Like you cannot disconnect your mind from your body. And in this situation, when we talk about the mind body connection here, the mind is incorporating your
Yeah.
mindset, your mental health,
Mm,
and your emotional health,
mm,
the emotions that you're experiencing, the energy in motion. So all of that is going to have a huge influence on how your physical body is expressing and
mm,
what it's showing. Like I always say to my client as well, your symptoms and your discomfort are a message from your body
yeah.
to your body
Yeah.
asking for more love and attention.
Yes.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
It's my own. I'm going to claim that
Yeah.
because it's mine.
Well,
Because
it's
it's true.
beautiful. Shows that our natural state, our natural state is not one of disease. Our natural state is not one of chronic pain or chronic suffering. Our natural state is one of balance and homeostasis and ease. And when we are not in that state, our beautiful holistic being is aiming to get our attention in all the ways that it wants to, as you said, to come back to that balanced love state.
And Harrison, you are definitely someone that I see as one of the most balanced men I know. And you're someone that I I know to be so deeply in your heart space so often. And I know that's not easy and I know that's taken a lot of work. And earlier you were talking about this aspect of awakening.
Mm.
And I'm really curious, what experiences have you had in your life that have awakened you to bring you to that place of ease and groundedness and being able to actually be so deeply in your heart space?
Mm. Well, many, as everyone has, right? There's many instances that pop into my mind as you ask that question. But I guess the one I want to share here, or the types of ones that I want to share here for your beautiful listeners, have been the heartbreak and the relationship challenges that I've faced, that we've all faced, right? And I could go into many examples of what they've all looked like. But I guess what I want to pull out, though, to make it simple, is those relationships in my life that have broken stories and illusions that I've been playing. Right? I'll give an example, a very recent one that happened that I actually was sharing with you to a degree in our weekly meetups that we have. It was a very intense, intimate connection, and it ended in a bit of heartbreak on my end. And one of the illusions, one of the stories that has led to some more awakening for me in relation to your question was that I was placing love expectations, a way of loving, a way of affection onto this person and expecting them to love in the same way, expecting them to have had the same spiritual understanding, emotional understanding, whatever you want to call it, and then give me that love back in the same manner. And long story cut short, when it ended, that illusion also shattered. And it was in that shattering of that story and all the subsequent emotions that came with it, I was able to drop deeper into my heart, right? And to not just feel the things that came with it, but finally see that story I was playing and take my power back to decide to let it go.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it can be really easy to forget that other people don't love and express the same way that you do. And part of that is because they have an entire backpack full of bricks that are completely different than yours. And we all have a backpack, right? And I know that that wasn't an easy experience for you to navigate. And I know that it was heartbreaking for you. But one of the things that I love so much about you and that I feel we deeply connect on is how love and how relationships are such a powerful and amazingly beautiful catalyst into deeper awareness of relating with other humans.
Well, yeah, we could do a series of podcast episodes on this, but I'll just link it back to a
Yeah.
point I made earlier on, one of your purposes for being here in this existence is to be in that emotional vulnerable state. Well, let's expand it. We're not just here to be in that emotional vulnerable state by ourselves. We're here to do that in relation to, let's get super spiritual, to other aspects of us, not just internal aspects, but the external aspects that are in the other people that we have relationships with. Right? That's how we do the deep stuff, right? I could spend all day here in my little home, and I do, reflecting on my own shit, my own stuff that I have conscious awareness around and get a certain way down the path, and it works. But it's only when we enter relation with another beautiful mirror that we finally get to see that which is unconscious.
Yes. Totally, yes, because other people are really what highlight these different parts of you,
Yeah.
right? And until you interact with someone or something else in the world around you, you really can't get a different perspective on these other parts of yourself. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely fucking love getting uncomfortable and why I love getting outside my home and leaving and putting myself into new experiences because it shows me those new parts of myself and it helps me look at them and like get more familiar with them so that I can then do more work with those parts of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. It's it's just so fascinating to me. Like it highlights many things, but I'll give another example of what it highlights here. One example. I believe we are powerful spiritual beings that have all the answers inside of us. And simultaneously, we are these beautiful, messy human beings that have a lot of karmic formations that we've acquired, at least in this lifetime, I believe multiple lifetimes, but let's just keep it within this lifetime. And that human being it works really well in tribes, right? It works really well in tribes of at least two people. So those karmic formations, those shadow aspects of self can be illuminated, right? I want to just read a quote to you. I brought up the quotes I wrote down from that book I referenced earlier. And one of the other spiritual laws that Colin Tipping talks about in Radical Forgiveness is we come into this human experience with a mission to fully experience a particular pattern, and I would assert patterns, multiple, so we can feel the feelings of that pattern and transform this energy through love.
Mm, that's beautiful. It's true. Like through love, we can transmute so many things. And it's usually not a comfortable experience, but it's a very expansive experience.
And I would
Very.
and I would invite people listening, you don't have to go looking for this. You don't have to like, please do what I've done in the past and jump on a plane and go to the other side of the country, other side of the world, and meet people and have all the stuff come up. Definitely do that. And realize that you can do this in the dinner you have tonight with your dad. You can do this in the lunch that you're having with your partner, right? It's all available to us right now here in this moment.
Mm. What what would you say and recommend to someone to be able to do that? Like, for example, to go home tonight and to sit with their dad, and how can they take this concept and apply it in that situation?
Another good question, Leah. So what I would begin to do, and I underline begin because this is a muscle, and like any physical muscle, our energetic, emotional, spiritual muscles are the same. We need to apply constant devotion to the growth of them. The growth I would begin is the practice of becoming the loving observer, the loving awareness that you already are. It's not a gaining of this. You are already this loving consciousness or this loving awareness that exists inside of you. Practicing becoming that awareness in these relationship conversations, interactions that you have, right? So I'll give an example of something recently that happened in my life with my beautiful father. We were having a conversation and he was telling me about his life, his journey of the day, and a lot of pain was coming up. And I was noticing that the pain that he was sharing from his day was triggering some of my own pain, was triggering some of my own similar patterns. And I felt myself becoming the pattern, becoming the story of the victim, becoming the story of the anger, the sadness. And just in that moment, while my dad was still talking to me, I'm still sitting there, this is all silent, internal, right? I observed myself feeling certain things. I observed myself playing out the story of the victim inside of me. I observed myself getting tight across the chest. And there are many steps we take after that. But if we can begin with that awareness, that detaching and feeling the moreness of what we are, then our liberation begins.
Beautiful. When you get to that point where you're watching yourself becoming triggered by your parents and still be able to sit there and just like watch it happen and like watch the cloud go by, right? And not follow the cloud and just come back into your body, come back into grounding. Um, One of the things I often recommend, because it can be really hard, and as you're saying, like begin this process, right? Because it is a journey and it is an ever evolving one that you are constantly learning on. One of the things that I recommend sometimes is like imagine just like zooming out, right? Like if you actually had a camera in your hands on the present moment situation and just like starting to hit the zoom out button. So you come back and back and back, right? And as you do that, looking at where you're at right now in the situation and recognizing how your perspective is different.
Mm.
Like, what do you see when you can actually take yourself out of this and kind of like be here and like look at what is this experiencing?
Mm.
I think that's something that has been really helpful for me in the past. I'm a very visual person. I love to visualize. I
Mm.
love to see. So this process of becoming more of an observer, it's been supported by that tool for
Yeah.
me. Has there been anything that's been most supportive for you?
Well, one comes to mind, but just before I get to that, I want to underline it's not a coincidence that the sense of vision is a catalyst for this process to begin for you, right? It is through sensory attunement and sensory sensitivity, I would call it, that we access this spiritual body that we are, this awareness, this greater sense of self, right? It's sensuality, spiritual sensuality. They're very synonymous, right? Because it's through the senses we access the deeper knowing that we are. But on that note, one of my sort of tools for coming back into my greater awareness is the breath, right? Is the power of intentional sensory breath. What I mean by that is not just breathing, not just bringing awareness to the breath, but really feeling the breath move through you, right? Feeling the breath move through your nose, right? Feeling your chest or your belly expand, right? And that could be the moment that you raise your vibration and awaken to a greater reality in that moment.
Do you want to guide our listeners through one like really wonderful breath?
Yeah. So I'll share a breath practice that I start my sessions with when I work with people one on one, and it's very simple. So get everyone to close their eyes and just start by listening and tuning into the silence and the presence all around you. And we'll begin by taking a very intentional and slow breath in through the nose, into the belly, and then breathing out extra slow through the mouth. And as you finish that breath, actively bringing your attention into your heart space, placing your hands on your chest, feeling your hands on your heart as you breathe in again through the nose, and then breathing out, releasing, letting go. And giving yourself permission to drop even deeper into that heart space. For you, this could be visualizing your heart itself, it could be feeling your hands on your chest, it could be hearing your heartbeat. However it works for you, giving the intention and the permission to allow yourself to be in that present space of love. And then when that's complete, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Harrison.
You're welcome.
Your voice could be on one of those like meditation apps.
Get that a lot. It's it it's funny you say that because we started this conversation talking about Clubhouse, and I think that was one of the biggest gifts that experience gave to me was the recognition and the remembering that one of my gifts in this world was getting to express and share my love and my frequency and my healing through the voice, through the words.
I deeply resonate with that. As you know, it's been a journey for me over the last 2 years of coming back home to my voice after losing it for so long and forgetting I used to sing and forgetting how I used to be able to project through this beautiful throat chakra. Um, Also, another thing that just brings us together,
Yeah,
Harrison.
yeah. Well, I'll share this just for people tuning in. It's okay to forget, right? It's okay to suppress and ignore, right? We talked about forgiveness earlier. But I think what's more important to acknowledge is there is a force outside of you that is you, right? What as within, so without, right? The love that's in your heart exists outside of you. There is a force that's constantly trying to bring these things out. It's constantly trying to evoke the power that you are. So, when you share that story, Leah, it highlights that not only do we not live in a universe where things happen to us, we live in a universe where there's constant stimulation for us to be the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And without that constant stimulation, without those challenges, and without those experiences that might be a little bit hard or painful, we would not be able to expand into our most fully expressed and loving and vulnerable selves without those. And it can be easy, as you were talking about earlier, around recognizing yourself in this victim role. It can
Yeah.
be easy to find yourself playing the victim and being like, well, why did this happen to me? And like, why this and why that? And in reality, like, what did you actually learn from that? So for you that's listening right now, if there's an experience in your life that just is so hard for you to think about, that just evokes pain and evokes this feeling of challenge and makes you feel maybe a little bit small, my invitation to you is to take a step back and ask yourself, and I would encourage you to sit down and write these things
Mm.
down on paper. What did that actually give you? What did that do for
Mm.
you? And how did that actually support you? And that might be a really hard thing to do at first, but not allowing yourself to walk away until you can really sit with it and gain some clarity around this thing that you feel has done so much harm and brought so much negativity into your life, actually nudging yourself to find the light and the positivity that it's brought to you. And when you can do that, I can guarantee you there will be a significant shift in not only your interpretation of the experience, but also your current experience in the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're describing is alchemy, Leah. You're
You're
describing the process of alchemy. And I think one of my favorite illusions to bust is that only certain people have creative powers, or only certain people are magical, or only certain people have gifts. When you describe the process of alchemizing the shadow into the light, that is magic. That is creation. That is gifted in many ways, and we all have access to that. We all have the opportunity to alchemize the shadow into the light and really remember the creator being that we were meant to be.
Yeah. Beautiful leeway into discussing shadow
Yep.
work. Yeah.
Kind of prompted you there a little
Harrison's
bit.
yeah. Tell me tell me what it means to you, to dive into shadow work.
Well, we've been hitting on it in a few different ways already in this conversation, but we talked earlier about allowing the emotions to come up, right? Allowing the an example I gave with my beautiful father, allowing the triggers to move through us, allowing the stories, the unconscious stories to be brought into conscious awareness. These are all shadow. This is all shadow work, right? How you approach it, there are many different ways, but shadow work to me is really, again, one of the reasons we are here. We're here to alchemize and learn and understand and experience the love or the pleasure of both polarities, right? And this is, I think, what I'm really excited about at this point in my journey. I'm really diving deeper into this nuance of shadow work specifically. And it's this idea of if I understand that I'm a powerful spiritual being that came here to have an emotional experience, as we spoke about earlier, then I am here to experience the whole spectrum. I'm not here just to experience the joy and the pleasure of the blissful, happy, expansive moments where I feel great. I'm also here to experience the pleasure and the celebration of the ickiness, of the denseness, of the mud that ultimately the lotus that I am will grow from.
And I think a lot of people label that ickiness as bad
Yeah,
or negative, like we were talking about before.
yeah,
And in reality, like it really just is.
yeah.
And then you get the opportunity and you have the invitation to pull from that, to support that expansion, like we were talking about earlier. And I think that's a great way to define shadow work is to really like look at both the beauty and the amazingness and also the ickiness and be able to be with both of those equally and simultaneously and bring to light the things that are going to support you in catalyzing forwards. I love that.
I think it's Shakespeare has the quote, and you just alluded to it. There is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so, right? And another quote I'll throw in that sort of connects to it is out beyond all wrongdoings and right doings, there is a field. I'll meet you there by Rumi. And it's in that field, which I would assert is our presence of divine love that we are, that awareness that we were talking about that we are. It's in that awareness, in that love field, that we get the opportunity to experience all of what's happening, right? And when we get out of our own way of labeling all of what's happening as the good box or the bad box, then we actually get to learn the thing or expand in the way that we're meant to expand.
I like this like it's like the field of
That's
opportunity.
exactly what it
I
is.
don't know, that's just what's coming to me. And
Yeah.
as you started to say that, and I was like, oh, in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's a field of opportunity. And you just dropped the opportunity, and that is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. Yep.
And we every single one of you have that.
Yep.
It's all already there for you.
Yep.
Just finding your path into it.
Yep. Can I give an example? I wanna
Of
give a
course.
really practical example of this because sometimes this can get really esoteric and out there, and I love that. But let's bring it back, and now let's give a practical example of this. And you used the field of opportunity. One of the opportunities, because I know maybe a lot of your listeners struggle with this, is energy, right? Is having a lack of energy to do things, right? Whether it's physical energy, whether it's, inspirational energy to make new things. I've noticed that by doing this particular kind of shadow work, where we embrace and actually, I take it further, celebrate the current moment, no matter where it is in the polarity spectrum, we reclaim energy. And I'll give an example. I've got into the habit of really practicing this idea whenever I experience something quote unquote negative, right? A limiting thought of scarcity, or maybe a dense emotion of fear, or last night, this morning actually, I had this dream where it brought some unconscious unworthiness, sadness up. What I've been doing practically is not just allowing myself to feel those moments tangibly in my body, but in that feeling, really celebrating, really acknowledging and joyfully allowing myself to embrace and be excited for that current feeling of sadness, that current illusion of unworthiness. And I've noticed an output of that is energy, right? I feel so energized either in the actual act or subsequently right after, because I've reclaimed the energy that was being pushed, that was being used to keep down that shadow up to that moment.
Hmm. Do you think that this is why having a daily gratitude practice can be super helpful and
Yeah,
supportive?
yeah. Another practical example of it. But
Yeah.
but I would take it further, not just because it's what I've noticed with people when they do with gratitude is that they're grateful for the good things,
Yeah, that I knew you were gonna go to this. Yes.
right? It's
Yes.
using the gratitude practice as you beautifully just said, but make sure you include. Don't just include. I'm grateful for my abundance. I'm grateful for my beautiful dog. Yes, all those things, and
Yes, and.
and I'm grateful for the anger that I got to experience today. I'm grateful for getting stuck in that illusion of scarcity today, right? That's how you
Yes.
would apply it.
And why?
Yes.
And why? Right? Because if you're not pulling into your gratitude practice the things that are feeling challenging for you, or the darkness that's coming up, or the feelings of depression that are there, or whatever it is that you're experiencing that might be icky, right? If you're not pulling that in, you're avoiding it.
Mm.
And then you're covering it up, in my opinion, spiritually
Yeah.
bypassing with the things that you already know are good and you already know are there. You already know for your gratitude. Right.
Yeah.
And so I love that you brought that forward, because I think that is the most important part about having a gratitude practice, is not just pulling in all the things that you already know to be good, but pulling in the things that maybe don't feel so good to find the goodness in
Yeah.
it.
That's it. It's
Yes.
another example of the alchemy that we just spoke about, right? It's another example of that.
Mhm. Yes. And so you and I have been talking about this aspect of shadow work through this lens of existential kink that you've been really diving deep
Yeah.
into. I'm curious if you can explain to us a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah. So Existential Kink is a process and a beautiful book by the powerful Caroline Elliott, PhD. She's a hopefully going to have her on my podcast soon. I can't wait to have that chat. But she's doing a lot of beautiful work in the world, and I encourage listeners to tune into that, her field of study. But basically, what it is, it's what we've been describing thus far. It's taking the idea of kink, which for most people, including myself, it's in the realm of sexual reclamation, and the idea that when we do sexual kink, it's creating the healthy space to experience shadows of sexual attraction or shadows of sexual intimacy in a healthy way where they can be felt and acknowledged. It's taking that idea out of the sexual realm and expanding it into the greater reality, right? In a simple way, asking ourselves, what are the emotional kinks or the spiritual kinks, the mental kinks that we have been suppressing and ignoring because we've labeled as bad or negative or shameful, giving them the space now to not just have awareness around, not just to be felt, but celebrated so they can be alchemized back into the light and we can actually get what we actually want. And I'll give an example around this. A lot of us are trying to manifest abundance in all the ways, whether it's money, partners, abundance of health. And we're doing all the affirmations. We're doing all the positive, I am worthy, I am lovable, I'm financially deserving. And we're not getting those things. And I would assert, as Caroline asserts in her work, one of the reasons we're not getting the thing that we're affirming is because we still have an unconscious shadow that wants the opposite, i.e., has pleasure around scarcity, has pleasure around not being worthy. That if we can allow to be embraced and we can allow to be loved, then it can be released and we do get the thing that we want.
Mhm.
Does that make
I think
sense?
that's a really good point. Yeah, yeah, because if you're not releasing that, it- I always say you have to create the space for it, right? And you only have so much capacity. And so if you're not releasing that thing
Yeah.
that is maybe preventing you from the abundance or not feeling good, how can you pull in the thing that
Yes.
you're asking and calling in
Yes.
that is the abundance?
Yeah. Because the law of attraction is a thing. It's working all the time. The outside world is reflecting what you are all of the time. It's just most of us are reflecting unconscious shadows that we're unaware of, right? We haven't brought those into conscious awareness so we can release them and reflect what we actually want.
And how can you bring this concept of unconditional love
Yeah.
into this this thing that you're explaining to us right
Yeah.
now?
So this is where this is why I'm so excited about, this, the work that she's doing, and because it connects so heavily to what I've been doing for the last couple of years now. And it's through this idea of unconditional love. I have a term or a practice that I call holding the child. And what that means is, let's use the example of, let's say that you are stuck, you're noticing you're getting stuck in a limiting belief of unworthiness. Or let's do fear of authority. That's a big one for a lot of people, myself included. And we notice that comes up in us around, it's triggered around money or triggered around government or triggered around your parents. One way that we could apply unconditional love and this idea of holding the child is doing the awareness practice that we talked about earlier, right? Doing the breath to be able to observe us actually being in that aspect of the scarcity or the fear of authority. But then once we are in that awareness, a step further, taking it a step further to add the holding of the child in unconditional love. So just like you would an external child, a physical external child that's in pain, that's just bruised their knee or is crying, you as the parent or the caregiver, how would you interact with that individual, that child? Would you tell them to hurry up? Would you tell them to get over it? Or would you create a space of unconditional love to hold, to allow, to give permission to that aspect to move, to be felt, to be released?
allowing that space to be held for you by you
Yes. Yes. By
and continuing to.
by the when you say you, right? Let's let's define what we mean by you, not the small Leah or the small Harrison that is a little individual expression, but the grander you, right? The you that is the, if you want to get super spiritual here, the unmanifested consciousness state that you are, right? The
Mhm.
field that we speak about with the Rumi quote, the field of love that you are.
Like the most divine and angelic
Yes.
version of you.
Yes.
I love that. And so, through this lens of looking at shadow work and holding yourself and allowing yourself to have all of these experiences and emotions and feelings come through so that you can have this abundance, right? Through this lens of existential kink.
Yeah.
My question to you is, as you've moved through this process and as you've been able to really embody this,
Mm.
how has it influenced your relationships and your partnerships?
Well, in many ways, but the way that's sort of coming in and in this moment to share with you, Leah, is it's helped me to see the bigger reality of what that other person, other soul actually is. Another quote here from Neville Goddard that I'll paraphrase is, we are living in a reality of fake illusions that we're creating of ourselves and fake illusions that we are projecting onto other people that they aren't telling about themselves. So what that means is I can walk into this podcast interview with Leah and I can project on the story onto Leah that she is this person that has a podcast and all these things. And I then act based off that story that doesn't exist, right?
Mm.
So what this example highlights is what I've started to learn through this existential, unconditional loving way of being with my internal parts. In relationships, what it's done is it's helped me be with the person fully. It's helped me be with my friends, my lovers, my family members in a space of what we actually are, right? The presence that we are, the presence of whatever you want to call it, your higher power, God, divinity, source, love, whatever. It's helped me, and I'm not perfect at this, but it's helped me more consistently be in a space where I'm not playing any stories. I'm just present fully with them.
Yeah. I can imagine this aspect of seeing someone how they actually are rather than seeing them as you want them to
Yes.
be or as you hope they would be.
Yes.
I can imagine that that may have led you to experiencing less dissatisfaction and disappointment. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Right, because we attach. We
Yeah.
attach to those stories, right? We attach to the
Yeah.
story of, it goes both ways, right? We attach to the story of they are this awesome, beautiful, amazing person, or we attach to the story that they are this, this person that we're judging, right? Both ends of that spectrum leads to attachments and expectations that will
Mhm.
inevitably be broken and will leave us in a state of suffering.
Absolutely. And the honest truth is that the majority of this world is living there,
Yep.
is living in this romanticized version of the people in their lives.
Yep.
And it's leading to stress and anxiety and disappointment and arguments
Yep.
and ch- just unnecessary challenge because at the end of the day, it's not the other person, it's you
Yep.
that's projecting these stories, these beliefs, these ideologies onto another person. because it's what you are thinking, it's what you are wanting, it's what you are craving, it's what you are desiring, it's what you are not actually expressing and allowing room to recognize within yourself,
Yeah.
likely,
Yeah.
right? And as you do that, it actually creates harm onto that other person without them even choosing that,
Yeah.
because you're romanticizing this thing that is not them, that is not their truth,
Yeah.
that is not how they truly are. And so it's like you're trying to fit the square peg in the round hole, because the square peg is what you're romanticizing and the round hole is what they actually are. They just don't fit.
And then you're judging them for not fitting into that hole that you created, right? And then
Yes.
you're falling often into the victim that they then did something to you. They didn't act like you expected them to, and it's caused you pain, but they're the problem. Where
Mhm.
in reality, this has always been a you game. This has always been, and I'll just, I'll say two things here. This, I just want to underline this to the first question you asked me, right? What is one of the ways, symptoms of dropping from the head into the heart, right? This is another example of what starts to happen. Our relationships change into what they actually are meant to be. But let's say that let's say you're working on this spiritual partnership and you want your partner to be more of what this is. You don't need to project any story on them to make them change. All that you need to do is to be your radiant self, is to be the radiant, fullest expression of yourself without those stories. And what will start to happen is that your beautiful example of expression will inspire them to do the same, will inspire them to ask questions, will inspire them to be like, what's going on here? How can I do that thing that I feel them doing?
And they'll feel it too. They'll feel that shift, right? Because you're no longer projecting onto this person, this thing that you're wanting and desiring. And so there's this energetic tension that is no longer there because you're just okay with what's there. And there's another side to this as well, around communication,
Mm.
right? And being able to optimally communicate with someone in your world if something is actually not feeling in alignment, or something, you know, isn't a romanticized perspective, but rather something that actually did hurt you in a
Mm.
particular way or didn't feel good, right? And that does take communication. But like you're saying here, is it's when you start to turn, I use the finger, right? If you're pointing the finger at someone else, like, hit pause, because the finger should not be pointing at anyone
Yeah,
else other than
yeah,
yourself,
yeah,
right? And it's not, it's by doing that, right? By pointing the finger at yourself, you're you're no longer playing the
yeah.
victim role,
Take
and you're taking more of a responsibility for the circumstances, right? Because nobody in their right mind is going to respond well to you pointing the finger at them and saying it's your
no,
fault.
no. Which is one of my favorite tools to share with individuals that are looking to expand their spiritual partnerships is using I statements, right? Communicating, sharing your feelings, right? Because this is not about suppressing, as you beautifully said. Just like the way out is through with our own self love, the way out is through within our dynamics, within our relationships. So you need to express the thing. You need to share the feeling. You need to share the truth, but you share it about yourself. Instead of you did
Yes.
this, you to blame, you're making me. It's I feel this. I need to share this.
Hmm.
I would like this to be like this.
Correct. Yeah. And if you're telling someone, you made me feel this way, you're not taking responsibility for your own feelings and emotions, and you're projecting those on someone
Yeah.
else. Yeah, that's not exactly going to lead to a spiritual or conscious
No.
dynamic,
And this would
or a grounded one.
this is one of the characteristics I teach people around with starting to identify more of a spiritual partnership that you have is your ability to share shit with each other, right? To share this, and I don't even like that word, share the shadows, share the the loving pieces that we've labeled as negative with the person, right? So
Yep.
not only they can see where you're at, but you then give them the opportunity to share their own stuff.
Yeah. And when you do that, it leads to deeper connection. Yeah. So, big question here. Why is this important for humanity right now?
Mm. It's funny, I was as with this last, I don't know, the time has gone out the window, but let's just say 20 minutes. The last 20 minutes of this chat, I've been thinking about, what how the world would be, there would be such a seismic shift if every single person at least set the intention to start embodying their relationships in the way that we've been discussing. Because, to answer your question more directly, it's important because we're not here to be by ourselves, right? We're here to be in relation with other expressions of the divine source that we are. So this is important for the world because what we're talking about is how we actually get to the root problem of things, right? We all are so easy to put our hands up to get to the root of our own stuff, right? To get to the root of our own individual, let's use the example, physical ailments. But as soon as it shifts into the relationships that we're having, I've noticed that we're a bit uneasy to get to the root of the relationship problem. But what we're talking about here is how we do it. And what I see, just to sort of land here, what I see as we all start to open to this, I see a healthier world, right? I see and healthy across all metrics because the way that we do one thing is the way that we do all things. And if we're showing up in this way in our relationships, then that's rippling out into all the spaces and places that we walk into.
Mhm. A beautiful answer. And what I'm hearing is that through through this approach and through pointing the finger at yourself and through diving into your shadows, I'm hearing that through this work, it can bring you not only closer to yourself, but closer to your
Yeah.
community, closer to your partners, and can help with eliminating a lot of the toxicity, the
Yeah.
stress, the hatred, the anger, all the darkness that we are experiencing that is not bringing us
Mm.
closer together as a society and that is not strengthening us as a
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. And I'll add one more little layer to it. It's not just the communities of people that will all affect. It'll also affect and impact the earth that we're on, right?
Mhm.
I speak about this often on my show. We often overlook the deep truth that we, much like we're in soul contracts with other people in our lives, like Leah and I, we're in a soul contract, soul family. We're also, all of us as individuals, we're in a big soul contract and soul family with the earth that we're on. And, we don't need to go into this topic today, but just to plant the seed, through this relationship work that we do with other people, we then open and remember our sensitivity and relationship to the earth that we're on. And just to really sort of emphasize the importance of this, once we reconnect to the communication with her, a lot of our ailments, a lot of our disconnection, a lot of our illness starts to evaporate.
like that societal disease almost. Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there again, right? It's we are part of this
Yeah.
ecosystem. This ecosystem functions with us, and creating a more succinct and functional environment, in order to have that, we have to start with ourselves. And, through that, we become better individuals. We become better mothers, better fathers, better family members, better friends, better partners, better lovers, right? Better partners to the
Yeah.
world and to the earth. And I love that we're bringing this home, around this concept of becoming one. And I think that's so important is to bring that oneness into ourselves, bring that oneness into the world around us, and to bring that oneness back into the one thing that we cannot function
Mm.
without, which is Mother Earth.
Yeah. Love it.
Right. Harrison, it's been so amazing just having you here and you bringing your energy to my listeners and being able to just like dive into some of this because we do it so often, like every week, actually, between the two of us, and everybody else, in my opinion, is worthy of it too. So,
I love you, Leah.
with
Thank
that
you.
being said, I love you, Harrison. Is there anything, any final thing that's feeling alive in you that you feel called to share?
Mm. Well, we've spoken about a lot today, but I will
Mhm.
say that, because I felt this along my own journey of this loving spiritual awakening and all the different little facets that we've hit on today. It can sometimes feel overwhelming. It can sometimes feel like a lot of things. You get it, you feel it, but then you take a step out your door and you come back to your life and you realize, yes, but there's so much for me to do. And what I would say to that person that is feeling that way, another quote to end today's conversation is the way appears once we start to walk it. And what that alludes to is you only ever need to take one step. You only ever need to focus on the one thing that's lighting you up or pulling you the deepest in this moment, and everything else will unfold, or everything else will unravel in the way that it's meant to. So, in today's conversation, in the context of today, what out of all the things we've talked about, what is the one thing that's activated you the most? And go do that, and then everything else will flow through after.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing with us, Harrison. And if my listener is interested in finding you and connecting with you, where can they do that? Where's the best place to do so?
Well, before I share that, Leah, I just want to say thank you for creating this space. Before we started recording, I shared with you that I had a vision that this was going to happen, and it's felt very it's felt very comforting, secure, and divine being held in your energy. And I am very envious of the future guests that you'll have on the show that get to be in your energy. So thank you for having me. I
Well, you can always come
Yeah,
back.
I have so much more to talk about. So yes, definitely that. But if people want to find out more about me, want to connect to me, the best way at first is either through social media. My handle is Harrison Mars, but Mars spelled Meagher on all social platforms. My website, harrisonmar.com. I'd also recommend you check out my podcast, Cosmic Love Antenna. I have a book with the same name, goes into a lot of what we've talked about today in regards to learning to tap into your unique frequency of love and sharing it with the world in all the ways. And I'm not sure when you release this, but I'm currently about to start a group program. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to me. But that's pretty much it, Leah.
And you have a special offer for my listeners
Yes,
today.
I do. So thank you for reminding me. I also do one-on-one coaching, intensive one-on-one coaching. And if anyone that's tuning into the show in Leah's lovely audience, if you reach out to me either through social or my website, mention that you heard me through Leah, I'll give you an extra session and 10 days of loving connection on top of any container that we end up doing.
I'm so grateful for you and your love, and thank you for sharing it with me always and for sharing with my listener today. And I appreciate the lovely words. Thank you so much. And it's been just as much of an honor to have you here with me and to always be able to engage in your love. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
I love you, Harrison. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today and for continuing to opt in to your inner work. If you found value in this conversation, please share it on social media or with someone you know that values both healing and growth. And I'd also like to invite you to join the Holistic Healing Tribe. This is my private community full of self-healers who are on a mission to optimize their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Click the link in the show notes to join the tribe. And when you join, I'll send you my favorite things that have made the biggest impact on my health, my healing, and my growth. And finally, if you're anything like me and deeply care about seeing a more mindful approach to human evolution, please leave a review to help us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact on the world around you.